The name Shaka Zulu is synonymous with power, strength, and an indomitable fighting spirit. His story is one of rags to riches, of humble beginnings that led to the creation of one of Africa's largest empires. Born out of wedlock to a minor chief and a woman from a rival clan, his early life was marked by displacement and struggle. But rather than letting these adversities define him, he channeled them into an insatiable determination to succeed against all odds. This is the story of how Shaka Zulu became the warrior king who united a nation. Our journey begins in the year 1787 in a small village nestled within the rolling hills of what is today South Africa. This was a time when the region known as Zululand was not a unified entity, but rather a patchwork quilt of small independent clans and tribes, each vying for dominance over the other. It was a world of constant conflict and political intrigue where allies shifted like the sands of the desert, and survival often meant resorting to violence. In this turbulent environment, our story's protagonist, Shaka Zulu, was born. The son of Sinzangakona, the chief of the small Zulu clan, and Nandi, a woman from a neighboring clan. But his birth did not bring him the joy and protection one might expect. Instead, it was met with a deep sense of shame and a desire to erase any trace of his existence. Why, you ask? Because Shaka's parents' union was frowned upon by society. You see, Sinzangakona had married another woman from his own clan, a union considered proper, and had fathered a legitimate son, securing his lineage. Shaka's arrival complicated this societal order, and so he found himself unwanted, cast out from his father's kingdom and labeled as an illegitimate child. As a boy, Shaka bore the weight of this rejection heavily, yet his spirit remained unbroken. He lived with his mother's family, enduring the taunts and scorn of others who saw him as nothing more than a bastard. Despite the hardships he faced, Shaka's inner strength never wavered. He channeled his frustration and anger into self-improvement, honing his physical and mental abilities. His mother recognized his pain and potential and played a pivotal role in shaping his character. She instilled in him the values of courage, resilience, and determination, teaching him that his worth was not defined by his father's rejection, but their peaceful life was not to last. When Shaka was around 14 years old, his father, Sinzangakona, fearing a possible threat from Shaka, ordered his mother and him to leave their clan. Once again, Shaka was on the move, forced to flee with his mother and find refuge in a neighboring kingdom. Here, in the court of King Dingiswayo, Shaka found a semblance of belonging. King Dingiswayo took Shaka under his wing. Recognizing the young boy's potential, he allowed Shaka to join the royal regiment, providing him with the opportunity to learn the skills and strategies of warfare. Under Dingiswayo's tutelage, Shaka blossomed into a formidable young warrior. He learned the art of war, mastering tactics and combat techniques that would later become legendary. At the same time, he also absorbed the broader political landscape, observing the alliances and rivalries that shaped the region. But this period of growth and learning was not without its challenges. When Shaka was about 20 years old, he found himself at the center of a deadly feud between his father's clan and the clan of his foster father. Dingus caught in the crossfire, Shaka was forced to flee once again, this time seeking refuge with a local chief named Jama. Now, despite being a minor chief, Jama possessed wisdom beyond his years. He understood the value of foresight and planning, something that set him apart from many of his contemporaries. Unlike those who often acted impulsively, Jama believed in taking the time to assess all angles before making a decision. He recognized the strategic value of having Shaka by his side, knowing that the young man's skills and ambitions could be a significant asset. And so he offered Shaka a place in his community, an act that would prove to be a pivotal moment in Shaka's life. Jama's influence helped shape Shaka's understanding of leadership and strategy, setting the foundation for the empire that lay dormant within him. It wasn't long before Shaka's reputation as a fierce and skilled warrior began to spread. People started noticing his bravery, his tactical brilliance, and his indomitable spirit. Soon, his name became synonymous with strength and courage, drawing the attention of many, including the Zulus, his birth clan. Sensing Shaka's growing influence and fearing his potential threat, his father Sinzangakona made a fateful decision. He sent emissaries to Jama demanding that Shaka be handed over. Jama, however, refused, recognizing that doing so would not only put Shaka in danger, but would also jeopardize the safety of his own people. Jama stood firm, ready to defend Shaka and his adopted home. The standoff between Senzanga and Jama highlights the central conflict of this narrative, the battle between tradition and change, between the old world and the new. Senzanga represents the old ways of doing things, the rigid traditions and hierarchies of his time. On the other hand, Jama embodies the spirit of adaptation and progress. He understands that the world is changing and that to survive and thrive, one must be willing to embrace those changes. Shaka found himself at the heart of this clash of ideologies. Caught between the expectations of his birth clan and the support he received from Jama, the situation grew increasingly tense, setting the stage for a showdown that would change the course of history. And when Senzanga warriors arrived demanding Shaka's surrender, Jama knew that battle was imminent. The conflict that followed was not just a physical one, it was also a battle of ideologies, of tradition versus progress, of old versus new. In the end, Shaka's side emerged victorious, cementing Shaka's position as a powerful force to be reckoned with. This victory was not solely due to brute strength or sheer numbers. Instead, it was the strategic brilliance displayed by Shaka and his mentor Jama that turned the tide. They understood their enemy's strengths and weaknesses and used them against them, showcasing the power of forethought and planning. But this victory came at a cost. It solidified the rift between Shaka and his birth clan, pushing him further away from any hope of acceptance from his father. In the aftermath, Shaka didn't dwell on the bitterness of rejection. Instead, he focused on what he had achieved, laying the groundwork for the future Zulu kingdom. With his military prowess established, Shaka set his sights on uniting the fragmented clans of Zululand under one banner. He envisioned a Zulu kingdom that would not just be powerful, but would also be inclusive and progressive. His ambition was not to rule through oppression or force, but through unity and shared purpose. He reached out to the various clans, proposing alliances that would bind them together in a common cause. His message resonated with many, especially those who had suffered under the oppressive rule of Senzanga regime. Slowly but surely, Shaka forged alliances, creating a coalition that would become the backbone of the Zulu kingdom. Under his leadership, the different clans were not just united, they were transformed. Shaka introduced a series of reforms that modernized the Zulu way of life. He created a centralized government, standardized laws, and implemented a system of education that emphasized discipline and hard work. These reforms may seem commonplace today, but in 19th century Zululand, they were revolutionary. One of the most significant changes Shaka brought was the introduction of a standing army. This was a radical departure from the traditional system, where warriors were called to arms only when there was an imminent threat. Shaka's army was always prepared, ready to defend the kingdom's borders or to expand its territory. This military innovation was not based on brute force, but on strategy and intelligence. He reorganized the army into smaller, more maneuverable units that were highly effective in battle. His tactics were a blend of traditional Zulu methods and those he had learned during his time with King Digna. Shaka's military innovations and strategic brilliance led to a series of victories that expanded the Zulu kingdom. He defeated rival clans and established dominance over vast territories, proving that unity and preparedness could overcome even the most formidable opponents. But Shaka's ambition did not stop at territorial expansion. He had a vision of creating a truly great kingdom, one that would be remembered for generations to come. To achieve this, he needed allies, and so he reached out to neighboring kingdoms, forming alliances that would protect the borders of his realm. He also fostered trade and cultural exchange, recognizing that true strength lay in the prosperity and unity of his people. In just a few short years, Shaka Zulu transformed the political landscape of southern Africa. He took a collection of small, fragmented clans and turned them into a formidable empire. His story is a testament to the power of determination, the importance of adaptability, and the strength that comes from unity. So what can we learn from the extraordinary life of Shaka Zulu? Perhaps it is the importance of embracing change. For, as Shaka showed, clinging to tradition can lead to stagnation. Or maybe it's the power of strategic thinking, a lesson we can all apply in our daily lives. Whatever the lesson, one thing is clear. Shaka Zulu's story continues to resonate because it is a story of triumph against all odds. A story of rags to riches. A story of the warrior king who united a nation.